War rages on in the world of tabletop gaming. Once the beloved leader of imagination and creativity, Dungeons & Dragons finds itself embroiled in conflict. Hasbro, the corporate overlord, has imposed controversial changes, shaking the very foundation of trust among its loyal adventurers. Fans, disillusioned and enraged, rally against decisions seen as betrayals, threatening to tear apart the community that once thrived. Can D&D recover its storied legacy, or will it fall deeper into the shadow of corporate greed? The battle for the heart of role-playing games begins now.
Hello, and welcome back to the Unemployable Life podcast, where we discuss on-the-job issues and offer unsolicited advice for dealing with difficult workplace scenarios. I'm your host, Charlie, and we're entering the dungeons tonight, where the dice are loaded, the dragons are dramatic, and my charisma stat is still pending approval.
Pretty high.
And I'm joined today by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Colin, and let's see. If you have to say you're the king, you're not the king.
Damn. This week, we talk Dungeons and Dragons. We get a little niche, and we have a lot to cover as we dive into the implications of Hasbro's business tactics on work, society, and the gaming community. But first, some housekeeping. If you haven't already, please go like and subscribe The Unemployable Life on all of the major social platforms. Consider a 5-star review if you liked us. And if you didn't like us, leave a 5-star review anyway. It's free for you, means the world to us, and we still love you, even if we aren't for you. Like, share, rate, review, comment. To those of you in the chat right now, tell us how you feel about Hasbro's recent behavior. It's safe here, my boy. You can tell us what did they do to you. We are actually really good at keeping secrets.
Well, I'm not.
To those of you who snuck in before the starting buzzer, thank you. As a reminder, we stream every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. EST, and you can find the stream at twitch.tv/theunemployablelife. These are also published to YouTube at the same name. For those of you who are here for the live stream, stick around to the end, because after the show, we will allow the chat to vote on future topics. If you aren't aware, we perform and record the podcast live on Twitch, sandwich the show with 15-minute segments where we hang out with you guys. We get a little off topic. We welcome you to the chat. You know what I'm saying? And thank you for everyone still here after that intro. I know these are getting longer. I'll work on that. The following is your payment for your labor. In 2022, Chris Cox, hilarious name, was promoted to CEO of Hasbro.
This is a real hard start.
By the way, his name is Cocks. So literally Cox. He was promoted to CEO of Hasbro from his former position as president of COO of Wizards of the Coast, publisher of Dungeons and Dragons. In 2023, Hasbro bleeds $1.4 billion. Dungeons and Dragons is one of $2 billion companies under Hasbro's umbrella, with the other being Magic the Gathering. So it's worth looking at how unironically unemployable Cox might be. So
we just appreciate his title was Coo Cox for a while.
It's just, dude, Coo Cox, COO of Wizards of the Coast. Christopher Cox.
Way to pack it up, dude.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Can I let me finish this intro, Colin?
I can't do it.
First, we'll start with an overview of Dungeons and Dragons and then see what Cox is up to before we get into the details around how society has made games like this so popular and the implications of that popularity as described by data on health and work and the things. So that's all I had left, Colin. Come on. I need you to explain to me.
His name is Cox.
It is. It's Coo Cox.
The bar is low.
He is. I hope he's not part of a clan, because it's getting real close to that. Explain to me what is Dungeons and Dragons, mostly for me. I assume most people who would be watching this probably have clicked on it for the Dungeons and Dragons, but for the sake of definitions here, what is Dungeons and Dragons?
Fabulous role-play game that essentially encourages your imagination to take hold. I mean, you usually use props and small pieces that represent your characters, but really it's about weaving a story with everyone else that's there, with the help of a usually frustrated, potentially under some sort of influence of a substance dungeon master who guides the plot line, if you will.
Have you ever been a dungeon master?
No. I haven't done that personally, but LARP gets close to it at times.
Is there Hold on. Is there a course you have to take to be a dungeon master? Because I've heard of disputes happening like in the 80s and stuff where the players would actually write letters to D&D HQ, which I believe at the time was TSR, something like that. TSR. They sue regularly. That's what it was. But they would do that to essentially like get official word to see if what the dungeon master was doing was accurate by the rules, because they would find some loophole in it.
Dang, I could absolutely see that. I know that if Hasbro had its way, being a DM would be locked behind like an entire paywall, which is part of the issue with Hasbro and their bad decision making and all of this goodies. But yeah, I don't believe like the original spirit of D&D is you were supposed to be able to just purchase the game, or the way I first played D&D, which was a long time ago when I was like 6 and 7, was someone just downloaded the character sheets and was like, hey, here are the rough rules. I'm going to walk you through it. And like all of us are going to tell a story together. It's supposed to be very accessible. And that's what made it powerful. Also, honestly, good math homework for kids.
That is actually something that you and I kind of talked about a couple of days, or maybe it was a week ago, actually. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But the ability of creation and consumption that this game actually allows, and like there is, like you just said, like math, like there is actual legitimate real world applicable skills that you gain from this. You're gamifying learning in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also the whole concept of listening to the story that is being told and trying to use logic to piece out what's happening next, why it's happening. Is this person the bad guy? Is this person not? All depends on your DM, of course. I had a really bad DM once. I drove him to the point of drinking purposely because I was just like, I don't want to play anymore. It was great. We had to do a roll to make a pyre for a dead NPC rat. Yeah, that's about where he started drinking.
You had to make a pyre for a rat. Yeah, but it was an NPC rat and it was dead. Was it at least like a plot point, or was it just like something you had to do on the trail?
No, even worse than that, and even more abstract. It was a guy who was playing a bard, and the bard had like a flute that could summon the rat with plausible deniability, and that was the rat. And we had the rat in a couple of early encounters. The DM was like, "This is fucking stupid. I hate your rat," because we would take time to like talk to the rat and see if the rat could roll for an attack and things like that. So he's like, "Okay, fine." He rolls for an attack and he gets immediately killed by this wolf. So the rest of the party is fighting, and we break off to like, okay, I'm gonna have to roll here. DM, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but I want to craft like a legendary mini funeral pyre. Rolled a 2, so it was a super shitty little stick pile. And then we had to roll to like get him on there correctly. Meanwhile, there's an actual battle going with people focusing and like really taking this seriously. And he and I are in the side corner just being dillweeds. DM stopped in the middle of what he was doing to get up, go grab an entire bottle of booze, and then chug.
You drove a man to drinking because you wanted to memorialize a rat.
Yep. Huh. That may or may not have existed.
But may or may not have existed. He did have plausible deniability in that regard.
Yeah. This is the shit that makes the game fun, is this kind of crazy stuff.
What would you say
then you tell stories of?
The storytelling part of it's kind of like, it's a lot of the game, right? Like what is the community like around that? Like, is there a pretty good consensus about the direction of the story and stuff, or is it like mostly chance?
I think it depends on the DM, and that's why, like I'm saying, there isn't necessarily a course for it. And anyone who has played and experienced this before, I think, would agree with the statement of, you have a really good DM, they kind of understand that they're setting a game board, but they can't anticipate where you're going, and they need to go with the flow on that. Case in point, one of my favorite stories about D&D is from, I believe, a DM who was using as an example of like, sometimes the players just do something you didn't expect. In this case, it was an intro scene. You run into, I believe it was a werewolf or some large monster in the city, and you are not meant to win this fight. You're very underleveled. It's basically, you're being introduced to what is supposed to become the big bad villain that's going to follow you throughout the story. But
it's
none of the players
God of War or something.
Yeah, exactly. But none of the players know this. It's just the first encounter with an interesting creature. And someone gets a limb bitten off, I believe, in the first bit. And the player pauses and is like, hey, question. What did this thing do with the limb? The DM's like, I don't know. He swallowed it. I'm like, okay, so he swallowed it. And he like looks at his character sheet and he goes, okay, so for this spell of rapid growth, do I have to be touching it to enact it, or how does it work? And the DM's like, I'm not sure how this is connected, what's going on, but I believe you can just pick an object that you are aware of that it exists. And he's like, oh, okay, so I don't have to like direct line of sight or anything. No, just if you know it's there and you can think of it clearly, like you can get this cast growth, but it only works on plants. Turns out that in the pocket, and it was written into the dude's inventory and character, he had a tree seed. So he casts the thing and a giant tree just immediately shreds the big bad final boss because he rolls like a fucking 18 out of 20 on it. So basically gets a massive boost to this thing's power. So like a redwood just right where the big bad used to be. Big bad's torn apart from the inside out. And the DM was just like, level 1, they destroyed the big bad boss. My entire plot line is shredded. Never underestimate what your players can do.
That is hilarious. Actually, I saw pretty clearly where that was going as soon as you said something about the enlargement spell. I was like, all right, I see.
Uh-oh.
Did you know the longest D&D game is actually 40 years long and it's still going?
That's crazy.
Do we
how do you? Did they keep the same characters, or did they like
that? I have no idea. I have no idea. I didn't read that far into it. It didn't seem like super. Because that would have been more of like a D&D specific thing. I just found that like a really interesting little tidbit, and it got me thinking like how does a dungeon master have a like set length of time, a certain certain
plot?
Yeah,
like, the idea is
like is this a 4 to 6 hour plot, or is this like a 4 to 6 day plot?
That's the most common one I run into is like one shots. Although there are some groups who start like seasons. And that could be pretty crazy where they'll be like, okay, so from January to March, we're doing the intro season for this. And you're going to build your characters. And it's all about like the intro arc, almost like a TV show. And then they go through the next ones. 40 years, though. Okay, that to bring it and loop this into the topic nicely, this shows the dedication that a lot of the player base has and the flexibility of the system and how essentially you don't have brand loyalists. You have brand evangelists. If you're playing a game for 40 fucking years, that's really impressive.
That guy is definitely not afraid of commitment. Hopefully he doesn't have like a suicidal thought soon or anything. Not afraid of commitment at all.
Pro tip, date nerds. Not afraid of commitment.
Not afraid of commitment. They seem to have a lot to offer too. I don't know.
It's not bad for
Yeah, I just want to spend some time here in the beginning and talk about the game and how intricate it can get, because the world building around it is kind of what makes the community so voracious toward the title. And it's also spawned a myriad of other businesses thanks to its open game license. But I wanted to touch.
It's going to be a big topic.
But the OGL is a really interesting thing. I don't know if you might be able to explain that a little bit more. You might have a little bit more firsthand experience with that.
It can be a benefit and a nemesis depending on how it's done. The OGL for D&D is basically referring to what we would call like almost a non-compete clause in the work world, where basically it's saying that you can use this to do other things with it. And the original idea behind D&D, like we were just talking about, good stories to share, all that funness. If I create a really good story, I want to brag and tell stories about it. That allows the fan base to go out and monetize without being chained to the parent corporation. That's mostly how the original one worked. So that's where you get some amazing groups out there that do, one group has a YouTube channel. Let me see who they are. I'm going to get in so much trouble for not remembering it.
Is it
Critical Role?
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, Critical Roles, I think, at least in my circles, is the most popular one. I mean, shoot, Netflix based an entire anime series off of their stories. That's where this progressed. It went from a, hey, let's play D&D together, to, hey, let's play D&D together and stream it and have like some famous personalities join us, to, we have an anime with professional voice acting and arguably some of the best action animation I've seen in a show on Netflix in a while, next to like She-Ra. But that allowed this to take place. That allowed people to make money based off of the game. And then the part that I think a lot of these greedy CEOs forget is that now that gets out, and that normalizes D&D from the weird nerd thing that you do in the closet, like, ooh, it might be satanic, to like, hey, I was watching this really cool show and D&D actually looks really fun. And it's becoming more and more mainstream, largely in part to the community normalizing it, which is how you make a bunch more money. We always talk about steel brands and stuff being like the American dream company. D&D is one of those American companies.
That's actually really, man, that's interesting. Actually, I didn't think about the rise in the popularity actually being the consequence, we'll say, of really good creators being D&D fans. They just put out good content, and now
Using
the
your
community
system
has grown. The brand has grown into exceeding $1 billion in profit. That's interesting. I had a different take on that, actually, and maybe it's because I'm outside of the community, so this is really interesting here for me. I kind of was wondering, and I actually asked a couple of guys at work who would be in the know and things like this, their input for it. I was like, what do you think gave rise to the popularity in D&D? And they basically said, well, it was Critical Role. Two of them said that just without even thinking about it. I was like, that's interesting. So what about the Honor Among Thieves was a pretty successful movie. It made $250 million in the box office right before E1 was sold to, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but E1, their TV and movie, Hasbro's TV and movie branch was sold to Lionsgate for somewhere around $500 million. So you could say that movie potentially made Hasbro something like $750 million.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that, but someone could say that.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's really hard for us to track data on some of the older things, like that, even of just how does that influence sales directly, and for how long does it have a ripple effect? Critical Role, I mean, they're probably going to be in their prime for the next 2 to 3 years, let alone how many people will cling to them 10, 20 years down the line.
Well, Critical Role, and some others, Paizo and I'm thinking Cobalt Press, COBOLD.
Right, Kobold.
I don't want to mispronounce here, but those three guys are all putting out now, thanks to the update in the OGL, which, by the way, I suppose we didn't cover the update, but as a consequence of the update, which we can circle back to after this little statement here, these three massive creators and publishers of D&D content are now creating their own fantasy world all their own to avoid having to pay the OGL fee now, which is 25% for publishers making over $750,000 a year. And fun fact, that includes this very podcast episode right here. So if this episode makes us $750,001 this year, we have to pay them 25%.
Neat.
Right.
Yeah. That encourages us to dive super deep into the topic. God, yeah.
I read the OGL and I did quite a bit of reading on it, and that is essentially what I come to. There's a little bit of discourse about it, but the overwhelming consensus is that like individual episodes also count, as long as you're talking about D&D. Now, we might have a loophole here because we are not discussing officially licensed characters, plot points, or anything like that. So that is kind of where the OGL gray area comes into play, I think. It's like, as long as you don't just mention names or something. I did mention Honor Among Thieves, though. We're fucked. We're fucked, man.
That's it. That's the end. That's all right. It'll just prep us for a future fight. I mean, and that's how constricting this is. I don't know what is with the current business trend that's doing this, and like the license change that led to this, that basically took it from a really freeform open system to like, my God, if you sneeze on a D&D manual, you owe the company money. That's very common. Unity tried to play a move like this, if I recall, where they basically were saying every download, regardless of if the user is actively playing, we're going to get money for. That's an insane monetization attempt. Loot boxes are a little similar in that, like, let's squeeze every penny out of everything we can. A lot of these groups seem to forget that, like, there isn't infinite growth, and that, if I recall, I think it was Pathfinder, one of D&D's competitors, which before all of these mistakes and changing the OGL and trying to hyper monetize it and turn it into a digital game front instead of an actual physical board game, which is the main point of it. Really, their competitors, it was kind of like you laugh at them. Like, yeah, they're competitors just because they exist. Like, no offense to those brands, you are fabulous, and I actually prefer you over the D&D system. I much prefer Pathfinder.
Yeah, but in D&D's eyes.
Yep, exactly. We're talking 80% market share versus the remnant. Like, you're picking the scraps of D&D. Well, as soon as this happened, I believe it was Pathfinder, it might have been another one, they ran out of a 2 years supply of manuals that they keep for new players, because the entire system hemorrhaged D&D players who were like, no, we're loyal to the story, the original idea, and the creators that were brought up by it. We're all going to leave to other platforms. And they did. And it was a crazy time just seeing this immediate switch and how all of their competitors started the game. So what was the play there, Hasbro? You decided to basically try to hyper monetize a system that's all about freedom and accessibility. And then you hemorrhaged so hard, but at every step of the way, you refused to acknowledge that what you were doing was fully not okay. You kept trying to squirrel away and get away at it. And now you've basically just fueled your competitors. They went from eating your scraps to being at your table. Like,
I like that you brought. I like that this was brought up because it's actually in my notes. A second and third order consequences. This was something that they probably didn't anticipate. They might have maybe vaguely like thought this could happen, but they probably thought that because they had effectively created an entire industry all their own, that they couldn't possibly have a competitor, because anything within that industry up until recently, very recently, has been made by D&D. It has been a D&D officially licensed thing or whatever. So until recently, like, there really wasn't a need for a competitor. There wasn't a need for a competitive universe, fantasy universe, anything like that.
Yeah.
And now I think a capitalistic drive, ironically enough, is actually driving their competitors to produce in spite of this 25%, because the chances of them succeeding and making more than they would have if they still had to pay that 25% royalty, probably pretty high, honestly. Like, they all got, everyone got burned by the changes to the OGL. And even the people who weren't immediately affected just didn't like the way it felt, because it feels skeezy and it doesn't feel genuine to the community. And as Chris Cox, good old boy, Coop Cox,
God, I forgot about that. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no. I'm trying to bring it back around here. Good old Coop Cox here. Having played D&D since 1983, his words, not mine. You would think he would know that, and he would be able to toe the line. He was not only in charge of the operations of Dungeons and Dragons for, I forget how long, for Wizards of the Coast, but a notable amount of time. Yeah. But now he's in charge of all of it. And the first thing he does is start stripping Hasbro of everything. Not everything. I will say it's not everything, because what he did do is he approved the cut of something like 50% of their titles, which only made up about 2% of their revenue. A lot of it was redundancies and stuff like that, which, okay. But the layoffs and stuff, I can't vibe with that. Right. I totally understand trimming down and all that stuff. We'll get to that point too. But
that's a juicy topic.
I do want to take a minute though and really get into this OGL thing, because I found some reasons, albeit not great reasons, I don't think, not entirely great reasons, but I did find some reasons that it could actually be a good idea. So let's steel man this argument real quick. So the original OGL was not meant for people to create apps, games, or videos. It wasn't really meant for competitors to get rich or make money. It was really just kind of allowed for free to use fan fiction. essentially you can create fan fiction without a consequence. In a way, this is very, very simplified.
Yeah.
Don't come at me,
I'm,
but
I'm following the capital logic. Don't worry. But we're definitely gonna cycle back around to it. I'm gonna have fun picking it apart.
And so, right. Well, this is why I wanted to bring it up, because like we're still kind of on the OGL, and before we venture too far off, I want to kind of stick to it here.
Yeah.
And then I have typed here. So if the community saturates the market with their own D&D brand, why wouldn't Hasbro look to quell that? So essentially, like, you have all these massive publishers out there creating things like Pathfinder, right? And D&D isn't, like, the makers of D&D aren't getting a cut of that until recently. And they're just watching all this money just kind of fall off the table and quite literally into the piggy banks of the people who are using their IP to do so. So
yeah,
it's a bit of a survival tactic. They were crushing it before, like they were growing in popularity. It's literally never been bigger. And so the money grab does feel illegitimate. And that is where it gets sticky for me. It's like, you guys are crushing it. Like, why now? Why are you making these inky decisions now for the sake of the business? And I think it's to capitalize on that wave. But then they sold E1 to Lionsgate. And that rings to me like they didn't believe in the brand enough. They were like, all right, cool. We got Honor Among Thieves out. That made us money. We're going to stop while we're ahead and just offload this. And then, by the way, Lionsgate offloaded 10% of the employees at E1 when they bought it. So that's pretty cool of them.
It's an ancient tactic in history that comes up a lot is when you defeat someone and you need to bring their armies into your own so that you can continue a bigger campaign.
You're going to talk about the Mongols again, aren't you?
No, the Greeks, the Romans, I think the Celtics did similar. The Chinese definitely did it a lot. The Japanese did it a lot. But you'd behead their commanders, or you would pick random people to basically establish, we can kill you at any point in time. You surrender to us. Kind of what it feels like in the corporate when they're just like, we're just going to cut 10% people. It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Toodles.
It's the cost of doing business.
We have the ability.
That's it.
Yeah. Like, but okay, so cycling back to that original piece that you said, and then we should define the OGL and the changes so that we're all on the same page. But cycling back to that topic, I think that's the hard part about role-playing games is essentially you have the Disney argument. Disney says, well, we made Mickey Mouse, we own it, we make profit off of it. Is a defined, specific entity. But imagine that Disney didn't have all their characters locked down by the brand. Imagine instead that you made your own characters in the Disney universe. And then the people decided which ones had the best stories and spread and created arcs. And then, the more that happens, the more the stories are shareable, the more you increase the chance that there's going to be critical role. And then when the critical role hits, you have viral moments where more and more people are coming in, and what they're seeing, stay with me here because this is a stretch. What we're seeing is a bit of like what the American dream used to be. If I join this, I can make something of myself. I can contribute to a larger story than my own. I may even make a bunch of money on it. This is an accessible dream now. And I get to share these fun stories and moments with my families and friends. It's different when it's basically saying, hey, I use your system as a guide to create all of this. As opposed to, well, I'm using your character. I'm going to sell Mickey Mouse t-shirts.
Love you, Disney.
It's not actually how that works. Don't sue us yet. God, please, no.
Yeah, I'll just beep out the last 7 or 8 syllables.
Yeah.
They won't have to know. I'll just put in love you, Disney.
Perfect.
Yeah, they'll buy it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mice are stupid.
Yeah. But so it's a little more broad and open. And so Hasbro has a history of doing this. And I think this is a good segue back into the OGL changes. So Hasbro also did similar with My Little Pony.
Yeah, they sure did.
Ex-Brony over here.
Shut up. No, you're not.
I watched a lot of them.
All right.
I could sing a few Twilight Sparkle.
We're going to touch back on that in the 15-minute little book at the end. Hey, stick around. Stick around for the end.
I got better. But yeah, no, so basically, My Little Pony took off. Talk about another moment of like a critical role where it just blew up a franchise. As that happened, people started to create fan fictions and stories around the original cast and storylines. As that spread, there were some really good content creators who made stuff that you probably could have just like Control C, Control V their video on YouTube and slapped it into a My Little Pony episode, and you would not tell the difference.
Or some Dragon Ball Z creators do that too. Dragon Ball Heroes is a good example of that.
And the interesting thing is when we're doing stuff like this, and it's not just directly monetized under the brand. Again, Stretch, stick with me on this. When we're doing that, it's kind of a really pure form of like democracy, right? If we like it, it's going to get a fuck ton more traction, which means it better be good. If we don't like it, it's not going to get traction because it's likes and shares and things that are all very much so, in a way, they're our way of voting for something to become seen and popular. We want
a bit of an economy there, yeah.
Absolutely. So now that creator probably never would have worked for Hasbro ever. But they have set themselves apart by showing that they can actually contribute to the brand. I liken this to being in a gym and training, or rather, owning a gym and training. And let's say you're a kickboxing guy and you know your kickboxing stuff. You have a kickboxing gym. You have somebody who just shows up. They're super dedicated all the time. God, the quality of everything they do is fabulous. You could honestly believe that they're a professional fighter. And then one day you see them giving some advice to someone else, and a few people are like, hey, we really like coming back to train with you, What are your two thoughts? Bad and good. My bad thought is, he's a fucking threat to me. Get out of my school. Don't teach anyone. I did not ask you to do that. Out. He goes. The people around him are like, ooh, that was a little shitty. Some might stay. Some may go. But you've tainted your brand a little bit. Alternatively, you approach this person and be like, hey, you're really good. And people respect you. I might have a job for you. And then you try to expand. Hasbro punished all of these creators for My Little Pony and basically got them to the point where they were just like, we're done. We're just shutting everything down, and some freaking amazing content. There's some hilarious stuff out there. Just dropped off the face of the earth. And it was shocking because the whole theme of My Little Pony is like literally working with each other and being collaborative and finding your special place in society, that your thing. And to the community, these creators were doing that. And then they smashed the entire concept up because they were afraid of the brand, other people making money off of their ideas, but it's extrapolated. I had argued that if they actually just went to these people and went, you're actually really good, let's bring you in on the team. Do you have ideas? Because this person was creating episode level content on their own. Something that takes them an entire team. Holy shit, I'd want that person in my back pocket immediately.
Yeah, I want him right now.
It'll make you more money, right? We can just turn into ponies right now.
I want him right now. I would love to have an editor.
Yeah, it's fair. We might be ponified for it, but why not? Whatever.
Have you ever watched Centaur World?
God, yes, I have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of brilliant. It always starts off so light and cheerful, and then by the end of it, I'm questioning existence and reality itself, and I'm just sad. And like kind of mad that I'm sad about it. Yeah.
The twist, though, the plot twist it's twisty. It's good.
Twisty twist that doth twist.
But yeah, so let's define this freaking OGL and the changes that led to all the frustration.
Yeah.
And is trying to assess the confusion that we're talking about here, where a brand wants to say, semi-rightfully so, this is our shit, no touchy. And then the people who are actually with the brand are saying, yeah, but you're the framework for what makes this great system and why we love you.
And it goes beyond the OGL too. Like it goes beyond Dungeons and Dragons, really. Like just Hasbro, who owns Dungeons and Dragons, will reiterate that for this point. But they've kind of got a history, like you mentioned, of just watering down IPs. Like when they got a hold of Power Rangers, I asked a guy I work with, "Hey, Frankie,
Freddie Lightfoot,
what do you think?" I was like, "What do you think, Hasbro?" He goes, "Well, I hate what they did to Power Rangers." I was like, "So you have strong feelings?" He's like, "Yeah, fuck Hasbro." So because he's a Power Rangers fanatic, and so I'm listening to him like talked about how they watered down Power Rangers, and like once they got a hold of it, the shows were, just like cartoony almost, like they were just so over the top, not believable. It was not the Power Rangers that he loved and all this. And then there's a whole rigmarole, not rigmarole, but there's a whole thing about Beyblades. After Hasbro took a hold of it, it was just garbage. Yeah. And now you find, was it Takaya Tomo? I'm sure I said that wrong. Beyblade. You can find those on eBay for like $50, dude. Like they're not cheap.
Beyblades were legit. First fight I ever got in was over a Beyblade.
I wanted to say something snappy there. I just really want to know more now. Tell me more about how future Hasbro ruined your fourth grade.
Well, it was more that we like created it was the only fad I ever started, and I was in like sixth grade, but I watched Beyblade and was like, I have to get one of these. So I got one and brought it to school and was like, check this shit out. It's so cool. And then they like fight each other. It was like not even, that was like a Monday. It was like Wednesday. There were like 50 of us that had Beyblades. And like 5 or 6 of us could actually had the cool parents who would get the little arenas. So they'd bring them. And we had this like sunken area in the school that was all concrete. So it just became a Beyblade arena. And we were all playing and having fun. And there was just one piece of shit bully who was just like that sixth grader that sprouted like 8 feet tall all of a sudden. So
sounds like a Frankie.
Yeah, it was a Frankie. Dude ran by and like literally snatched one of my Beyblades that I really liked and ran and was just gonna fucking steal it. And he was faster than me, but I was just dogged and I just followed him until the point he dropped his guard, yeeted up this fucking tall man's back, and just started like until he dropped the Beyblade. And then was like, ran off with it.
Just
that got
off.
everything banned. That got everything banned. Beyblades became like black market shit after that. Like literal kids being like, I got the good shit. Fully metal.
Say more. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, and that's how everyone would react too. Everyone would do that thing, like, act casual, and you're like, yeah, that's relaxed.
Meet me under the slide at recess.
Yeah. I'll get the money.
God, this is 2 days of lunch money. I hope you know.
Right? In this economy. Yes, the OGL.
So the OGL has actually spawned a sort. What? Hold on. Did you finish your point about the OGL? Man, I got really hard up on that on the Beyblade thing.
What was the question?
Well, no, we were just explaining the difference between the OGL, the original.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I thought I was just like,
one was open, one is not.
Let me wait. Let me figure out if he's got any other things to go over. So it did, however, the changes to the OGL encouraged their competitors to actually grow the industry, not even the market, like they were expanding the industry. And one of them, actually, Peso, came out with the ORC, the
that sounds familiar.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty clever, actually. Let's see. Yeah. The original game license is, I believe, what's it called. And I just want to be correct on this. But so yeah, they came out with the ORC and the Open RPG Creative License. That's why that's why the Open RPG Creative License, the ORC license, that's from Peso. And it has one massive benefit in that it is irrevocable. It is in like the first clause right there, stanza 1. We cannot take this away from you. And then it goes on to essentially just be essentially be another version of the original OGL that gave all of the community and the fans that loved it the freedom and access to do with it essentially what they please.
So basically that's a super smart move in the sense of the OGL, as it originally was, the OOGL, basically allowed this freedom that allowed D&D to passively dominate the market, like a giant sleeping dragon sleeping on his hoard, to put that in context with the right theme here. But by my logic, you say encourage competition. It absolutely did, but not in the sense that I'm sure some CEO would phrase it as. We're merely encouraging competition and expanding the market. Like, yes, No, the dragon tried to go steal more gold and accidentally met like a well-armed army and had to back off and lost a bunch of its horde.
Do we think Ku Cox might have had this in mind for the industry? Because unless he's really banking on new entries into the D&D scope who didn't have previous experience with the previous OGL. So maybe he's just planning on waiting the former community out because the new people won't have any former context of what it was like to be able to use this stuff for free. So then you're setting up a bit of a long-term payment model for a short period. It's loss leading almost. Sure, it's $1.4 billion loss leading, but
okay. I would believe that theory if I thought he was actually smart and strategic in any regard.
Would you like to know his qualifications, Colin?
Oh my God, I would.
Yes. Okay.
Don't fucking say West Point.
This is, oh my God, if he was from West Point, he'd probably be working for Lockheed. What are we talking about? Okay, this is straight from Hasbro's website. All right, this is his.
Oh God. Okay, it's propaganda. I'm ready.
Okay, so his qualification starts with. I'm just going to pull it up, man. No.
Yeah, this is a screenshot.
Yes, I am. All right. Qualifications. He has 3 of them. His first is highly strategic leader who understands how to create and nurture brands to drive fan and consumer connection across channels. His second, ability to channel storytelling passion into consumer experiences across gaming, consumer products, and entertainment. And his third is a unique vision, skill, and experience in tabletop and digital gaming combined with extensive omni-channel experience and a proven track record. I will say he did pretty good things for Wizards of the Coast. He I have it here under his role.
This guy
but whatever. Wizards of the Coast actually grew by 150%, passing the $1 billion mark in revenue for the first time. So Ku Cox did that. He did that.
But here's the
cost
question.
of $1.4 billion for Hasbro.
As a data nerd, I would almost argue that he might have been experiencing a very natural growth in the market. Because think about when we were younger, nerds were not the person to be. It was D&D was kind of like those are the really out there nerdy friends, like the ones who have like hippie moms and stuff.
Yeah.
Or like the oddly rich, like early tech dudes where you're like, man, this guy like does IT for a school and has like a mansion. Wow,
yeah, and he's always got Diet Coke in the fridge for some reason.
Oh yeah, he's the DM that like turns on a fog machine at certain points to make everything more dramatic because he had the disposable income and the economy was better.
Damn. Gets us some dry ice too, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh no, I derailed. Where was I going with this?
Fuck, my bad. I just got really wrapped up in what you were talking about there.
No, same.
I was building the story. We were talking about Ku Cox making Words of the Coast 150%.
That's right. Sorry, the whole point of that was saying that like way back when nerddom was the like, hey, fuck nerd. Come on, man. You're good at sports. I got the shit kicked out of me as a kid because I was a nerd. And then nowadays, nerds stand toe to toe with jocks. Earning potential, societally more accepted. In general, people are just kind of having fun with nerdy stuff. Society's relaxed a little bit and allowed a lot of people to be themselves and not have to posture. It could be that CEO experienced a bunch of growth because of the natural direction that our culture is taking, which is loosening up on things and like talking about heavy topics like anti-work topics. I would need to see very convincing data that proved that he took specific actions and then correlated changes to those actions. And I would actually debuff him on any time that it was harmful to communities. Because you can argue that there's so much growth going on in a market that after a certain point, you don't feel the negative impact.
Yeah.
Which gives him a Napoleon complex. Because give me that first value again.
Oh, his first qualification?
Yeah, qualification.
Highly strategic leader who understands how to create and nurture brands.
So the highly strategic leader who knows how to create and nurture brands basically nuked one of the most well-loved brands overnight. And then what was the next part, the next qualification? Ability
to channel storytelling passion into consumer experiences.
And so instead of doing that and actually using his brand marketing goals and his position to convincingly tell the player base, hey, this is what we're actually doing. Our apologies, we're going to make this right. We're going to He rolled for charisma. He got like less than a 1. There's got to be a negative dice that I'm not aware of.
He
But
definitely,
the dude completely failed his charisma check.
and then he had a unique vision, skill, and experience in gaming also.
Oh, yeah, I would actually agree with that one. He totally does. He's great at running them into the ground. That's
At least he's running. I mean, a lot of people don't even do that anymore. So, he's got that going for him.
Can you and I say that we've tanked an entire brand? I mean,
not one that was worth anything yet, but yeah, I mean, yeah, good old Koo Coxo. Kind of looks like a pigeon too. All right, he's probably a fine guy. I don't want to rip on him like as a person, so I'm not going to do that. But Cox.
I'll rip on him just because he wasn't honest with the community and like, come on, man.
So I also went through. Yeah, he did very much sell out the community. For his own. I can only assume anyway his own personal gain. Even though again, 1.4 billion lost. That's just and I know a lot of that is divestment from an entire media company in E1. So then selling that is a massive part of it. They sold it for under its value and all this stuff too, from what I understand. So I keep coming back to that because that's not a small number, dude. And then you keep thinking about how the community out there is kind of watching the one thing that many of them, because it's probably not a stretch to say that a lot of people who are into games like D&D are very much into them. In fact, I work with a guy, Frankie, another Frankie. He's really into Warhammer. Dude loves talking about it with me. I've never played a game of Warhammer in my life, but I was familiar with the title. And as soon as he found that out, he's talking to me about custos. He's talking to me about the bugs. He's talking to me about the dwarves. And I'm just like, say more, dude. This shit is fascinating. Like, tell me more. I'm getting lost in the stories he's telling me. So if you're playing that stuff, I can only imagine the hours, the days, and the months and years you would eventually lose in that if you don't check it. And they're watching that be ripped away from them, the very thing that keeps them grounded. They're watching it be ripped away from them by a guy who started out as them.
Yeah.
One of their own is turning on them.
Part.
He's got a board, he's got a board to answer to. I get that. Like he's doing CEO stuff. He's doing what he believes is best for the business, and only time will tell if this loss leading situation will work out in Hasbro's benefit. But there was also in 2022, somewhere around the time Koo Cox was initiated as the CEO of Hasbro, a challenge by Alta Fox, who owns 2.5% of Hasbro, to the board. They're like, hey, we want some of these motherfuckers gone. And then essentially they lost. Everyone was voted in and they could maintain their positions plus Koo Cox. So there was, in 2022 alone, a CEO change and a board challenge. And then a year later was the mega hemorrhage that was December. By the way, when they did that, they laid off, 1,100, 1,500 people 2 weeks before Christmas last year. A toy company
laid off another batch this year.
Yeah, another couple hundred. A toy company laid off people before Christmas.
You can't write characters this bad. Like if this was in a movie, you'd be like, this is so corny. Who would actually do that? No one's this monstrous. What
was that movie? It was from the 90s. Was it? It wasn't Big. It was maybe Batteries Not Included. Where toys became sentient. It wasn't, but it wasn't Toy Story either. It was a live action movie. Something about batteries. And I remember an evil toy company owner. That's about all I remember. And if I remember right, like the toy, it might have been Small Soldiers too. You know what?
Was that it? That sounds super.
I think it was. I think it was the ending of Small Soldiers that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
That's him. That's Koo Cox.
Really?
No.
I was like, holy shit. Happy for a moment. But you mean as a concept? Yeah.
Like kind of as a concept there. Like I don't remember what Old Boy from Small Soldiers did to the toy company, if that is in fact the movie I'm even thinking of. But
yeah,
I remember being mad about it when I was 7 or 8 years old. So there's that.
Yeah. I always just think about it from a long-term brand growth goal. I do a lot of working with many different brands, like from established to brand new and just starting. And every single one that I've ever worked with has always been like, when do we start making money? Let's go. Like everyone wants that instant growth. If I were offered instant unstable growth that could go away versus stable, slow growth that's scalable, I would choose that one. And I think what we run into is this catch of it could be the board telling this leadership team, hey, we want this target. And it could be some crazy number because they're the board. They just want lots of money. And it's the fiduciary duty of whoever is in leadership roles to achieve that goal legally, which is a really fucked up law. I can get protecting a business's interests, but there are times, like even Sun Tzu wrote that there are times when you ignore the sovereign as the general. I don't get why people would be so daft as to just completely nuke a brand. And honestly, like I get you want a lot of money and that's part of the CEO role. They kind of just sell out for a bunch of money and then have to kind of do whatever to make it look good, including laying off your hardworking teams so that you look like you're tightening the budget a little bit. Like that's just a corporate bullshit thing that started. I think it was like the 80s was the earliest version of it. And then it really ramped up. And now it's at its most absurd level ever, where people are literally cutting the efficiencies of their systems so that they barely function, and they call that's a good lean operating model.
Yeah.
That's stupid. It doesn't set anyone up for success. You want this long-term stable growth. And God, you don't know how much more money all these people need to be satisfied with themselves. Like, you don't need to be Nessie and Dolly yacht rich.
Yeah, by the way, Hasbro is still worth something like $4 billion. So, I mean, they're not hurting. They lose $1.5 billion or so, but they're still worth billions with an S at the end and a B at the beginning. Like,
but these companies will talk about, they'll talk about being always at a deficit. And this is a really clever tactic that is used by a lot of companies. I worked for a few that did this. They would basically say, okay, let's say we made $1 million this year. Normally in a marketing team, you would look at that and say, okay, so if we made $1 million this year, what did we make last year, the year before that, the year before that, the year before that? On average, you look at about 5 years of data and model a growth curve off of it. You say, okay, we have this kind of momentum. So we can say that we're going to probably safely grow by, like, let's be generous and say 13%. Well, then leadership will have to go, is that an aggressive enough goal? Are we selling ourselves short? 20%. And all the people who are like, oh, okay, that is feasible. Let's go ahead and aim for it. At a certain point, they set the goal so high that you never hit it. It doesn't matter that you made more money than last year and barely hired any new crew and don't really upkeep your equipment. But you made more money this year. You achieved that goal of perpetually growing. But sorry, we did not hit that 20%.
Yeah, it's arbitrary.
We got 18%, guys. We were right there.
Yeah, if only you'd done more Sundays. If only you'd worked Labor Day. Yeah. If only you'd come in instead and just left your family in the parking lot with your 4-month-old baby in the Florida heat. If only.
Oh, yeah. Hey, that's 2 stories in one.
It is. Neither one of them are us, by the way.
Thankfully, shit. Ooh. Yeah. No. I don't get this. I would kill for the slow, long-term domination. I can't imagine anything more embarrassing than like taking on like a lead marketing role or something and helming the ship as you destroy your brand. Like, I can't imagine.
And then have everyone watch you, like the community is watching, dude. Millions of people are watching.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, like they're watching everything they've loved for years, decades probably. I mean, the one dude's had his game going for 40 years. 40 years. He's having his money taken away from him now. A livelihood that he's probably been building for the last several years at least. Yeah. Because there's no way that hasn't been, a social media phenomenon, at least in some niches. And
because to clarify, basically, one of the proposals done by Hasbro was that if you wanted to be a DM, you would have to pay a hosting fee. And that is an insane concept.
How would that even work? Like, it's not like they have tracking or monitoring devices on their boards.
Well, and that's probably why they're moving to a digital system, because that is one of the proposed ideas.
I'm really happy we
Now-
worked there because I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Easiest way to
I was going to say mostly about what it's going to do to the community, because I think the VTT, the virtual tabletop game, will grow the company, grow the brand. I think it will, because it'll lower the barrier to entry. One of the things that actually kept me from getting into D&D when I was younger, I knew some kids that were into it, and I got along with them. I was always interested in listening on the conversations, much like I was listening to Frankie's conversation about Warhammer.
Yeah.
But I was always intimidated. I never really understood like who or what was making these moves. I never really understood what the driving force behind the story was. I understood Turok Dinosaur Hunter. That's what I understood.
That was early me too. I was like, what do you mean I'm level 1 and I can't even like accurately aim a bow? Like, this game's shit.
Yeah. I was like, what do you mean? I've been killing raptors with a buck knife since the womb, basically. Like, come on.
Yeah. I played James Bond. I know how to kill people.
Yeah, especially with Big Head and Gold Gun. And
God, that was such a fun game mode. Thank you for that flashback. Pinball grenades. Anyway.
Golden Guns only? Murderous, man. That'll ruin friendships.
Violent, yeah.
Fuck, dude. Like, that'll make you take a real golden gun outside and be like, all right, high noon, let's get a tumbleweed going. 10 paces.
One bullet.
Draw.
They're just lawn darts.
Even worse. You ever play beer darts? Yeah. I played it once and I kept getting stuck in the guy's ankle. But he knew it was coming. They're brightly colored. He could have moved.
I have some martial arts stories for another time. But yeah, no, it fascinates me that this can happen. They've done an amazing amount of damage to their brand. Like, this is actually something that in marketing circles we were studying, because you don't often see a brand faceplant. This wasn't a oopsies. They tried to play it off as an oopsies and then continued to lie to the community by saying this was an intended leak. There's got to be communication.
Yeah, well, that's why I was asking you earlier, because you are in marketing, if this was maybe like the world's most epic loss leading strategy.
No, it is. I don't think the data would support alienating double-digit percentages of your audience, sending them to other brands, pissing them off so much so that they're like realistically going to tell their children about this kind of thing.
Yeah. Making
what is perceived by the public as one of the greatest marketing faux pas that has happened in this decade. Like, actually in the 2000s, to be entirely honest. There's been some goofy mistakes, but this is bad.
Are they going to, do you think, study it like they study maybe like Kleenex's ad campaign, where it's so good, like we were talking about last time, it's so good that now facial tissue is just Kleenex? Yeah. Just in the other direction, that's good. The other, Hasbro's. Yeah.
They're going to study this like the battle at, I think it's Cannae. It's a legendary Roman defeat. I believe that's where Hannibal surrounded a Roman legion and murdered them to a man with less troops. Was the interesting part. One of the first times that encirclement had been recorded in history. That's how they're going to talk about it. Not from the perspective of Hannibal, the conquering great, but from the perspective of those poor, terrified Roman legions that got butchered down to a man.
So who wins then? Who's Hannibal? You think it's Peso and Kobold and?
Yeah,
Do we think it's the community overall, or is it going to be? Do you think you got a little bit better thumb on the pulse than I do probably here? Do you think like Critical Role is going to come out with just an absolute banger of an IP and just kind of tank Hasbro? Because right now the only thing really not tanking Hasbro and D&D completely probably is the ease of access that it has now, and the fact that it's such a recent development that the competitors haven't really had a chance to get a fully fledged, I don't think anyway, system out there. There's bits and pieces. Yeah. There's some large pieces out there, but
well, and so don't get me wrong. I do think on the topic of like the digital system, it's smart to have a digital system. Like you said, it's going to ease the barrier of entry. It's going to get more people into it. God, you can have VR spin-offs where like some of them are tabletop, or some of them are literally like you're dropping like full Halo quality NPCs in to fight your guys. I would eat that game up if you got to like deploy the monsters in a VR game for people to fight. But nuking the original version is a mistake.
Yeah,
that's one of the poor marketing moves.
So there's a horrible marketing move they did. They in the updated OGL, which is something we haven't touched on yet, surprisingly. It was kind of the only other piece that really I think fucked everything up. There's a lot of other things, but I think it was mostly these two big ones: the 25% royalty and the monetization of the player packs and like the essentials, right? For context, you actually put this in a really good context for me. It's essentially like playing a guitar, but you have to pay for the C, G, and A minor chords, which are the three most commonly used chords across Western music.
Yep.
And you have to pay for those. You can use any other chord outside of that for free, but those three chords you have to pay for.
25% of whatever you're generating when you're playing that guitar, by the way.
Yeah. No matter what chord I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Hopefully that helps people kind of understand what the essentialness, the fundamentalness of the player packs is with that. So,
I think, sorry, I just remembered your other
you're good.
Community. I think community's always going to win because this community is super tight. Like I'm on the fringes of it. I barely play. I do LARPing. I do live action role playing. So slightly different. It's communities that are passionate are really strong. They may not seem it outwardly, but they will find ways to survive and find something else. And it may shatter for a long time, but it's going to eventually coalesce. In the historical context too, this is great for all the competitors in the sense that the most damning thing to an empire is a defeat because it proves that the giant can be toppled. And that changes everything. And this was Dungeons and Dragons defeat. They had goofy little moments. Like there's some really bad Dungeons and Dragon movies. Like there's some really bad ones. But they survived those. This was the first time where it was like, no, they came to bear and lost. And then tried to hide it and lost again. And now all the little surrounding nation states are going to pick them off.
Is there room in one person's life for more than one D&D type game? Like, can you play D&D and Critical Role's new game, or can you play D&D and Warhammer or something like that? Because from what I've seen from the people who are in these games, it's almost all consuming. And I kind of get that in a way that I'm a massive fan of Coheed and Cambria. And they're all except for one of their albums takes place in a story, really sci-fi horror kind of romance story. It crosses time and shit and just stuff. I nerd out. And if I'm around another person who knows in depth about that story, dude, I'll get lost talking to this person for hours. It's a problem. It's a real problem. I used to work with a guy who was as into it as I was, and we couldn't work together. Like I had to walk away because I was going to get fired for talking to this guy too much. Is that like, I guess what I'm saying is like, I wouldn't be able to do that with another band. Is that kind of how it is with these people too? Or is it like, or is there some Venn diagram blending there? Cause I just don't know if the capacity, I guess.
I think it's a Venn diagram blend because so in LARPing land, we have a similar situation. There's a core set of rules that are used by most of the LARPs. And it's basically the core functionality of like each limb is worth X. Limbs are defined by this area. In general, melee doesn't hit head. Limbs are worth X points. Arms are worth X points. There's a template for contact fighting LARPs, right? Bellegarth, Dagahir, Hearthlight, Amped Guard, all these other groups use that core system, but they use it in unique different ways. And there are some diehard people who are like, I only do Hearthlight because I actually get to role play. Hearthlight can actually be so detailed at times that they'll actually, like, if you want to learn to pick a lock, you have to literally learn how to pick a lock. It's not a game element. You're picking a freaking lock. Kino Novitas is similar. There's a lot of diehards, but there's a lot of cross gamers. like Amtgard compared to Belgarth and Dagahir could be D&D compared to Pathfinder, where D&D is more like the Amtgard stuff, lighter touches, magic casting, leveling up by attendance. You go over more towards the other side of the spectrum with like the Pathfinder logic, where you start leveled up, you can do kind of whatever you want. It's about telling a cool story. That's more like Belgarth Dagahir here, where it's just about fighting, and you show up as you have your garb, you just have an interesting name, and you have fun with wacky bats. There's cross gamers for all of it, but the only thing that will discourage cross gaming is a large financial entry. Because like that's one of the changes, is that it used to be that you get character sheets for free that were official. Well, now you can't just download the PDF and print them yourselves. Now you have to actually buy a packet of them and a digital download cost. That's insane. Because, I mean, your character sheet changes. You write on it a bunch. I knew people where you would retranscribe your character sheet every session because you just have so many notes and crazy stuff. You need to consolidate it and have your like leveled up version. I think my first character ever, my playing partner made me keep my level 1, my level 3, and my level 5 character sheet. And that was my challenge, was to kind of redefine it each time. Helped me focus as a kid.
Yeah. So I suppose I might have been operating under might have been operating, governor. Might have been operating under a bit of a false assumption, then maybe a stereotype even. So that is definitely my apologies there. I just sort of like, well, it's also too like the fanaticism. I just feel like there is a level of fanaticism that you can almost see in some of the D&D type gamers. And obviously it's not all of them. There's 10 million gamers out, 10 million D&D gamers out there. 3%, by the way, are women. So that's
that'll grow.
That'll grow. That's why I pointed it out though. That's why I found
that's
it.
The other side of that market.
Yep. And with the lower barrier to entry, I hate to say it, but
doing. That's what Cox's financial plan they need to be doing.
Cox, he's trying to get there is another gender, right? Like there's a whole other one that you can access. You're missing 50% of the market by not paying attention to them.
Hey, Hasbro, call us.
Yeah. It should be Hasbro. How about now, girl?
Now,
well,
oh shit!
I can't say that too loud. That's going to come, especially not in public.
I like it. I come from matriarchy, though.
Yeah, I just like I said, I just didn't know if that was like a thing where it was just so overwhelming. Or like that was the only game you could focus on. But if there is a crossblend, then maybe these other competitors will actually have a chance to capture maybe a majority of the D&D audience even. Because in my head, I was thinking, well, D&D is going to hold on to a majority share of the industry because it's their industry. And then you got these other competitors who are coming up like Critical Role and Paizo, and they're going to get maybe a split of 50% of the share of the industry, whoever is interested in buying these things. Yeah. But if there is room in the human mind and the individual to absorb the rules and the nuances of each game realm and character and interaction, dude, this is going to be like a pretty exciting industry to watch, actually.
Oh God, yeah. Like Nerd World is kind of going up into the right for the foreseeable future. But I have another interesting analogy for you. So jiu-jitsu and judo are quite heavily related.
Mm.
And which one do? You do jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine that jiu-jitsu goes after judo and goes, whoa, you're using our system technically. I know it's different, but you're using our system. Give us money. There's this,
and then they would fight.
Example. Right? I wish that'd be pretty. But then,
it's kind of what they're doing, though. They are fighting back. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's kind of what they are doing.
Oh no, absolutely, they are. I mean, they're trying. The other analogy in this is, imagine jiu-jitsu fucks up. You're kicking butt and taking names. You're about to hit a black belt, and your instructor goes, "Hey, okay, so Jiu-Jitsu LLC, who owns all the jiu-jitsu everything in the world, they changed the rules. So you now rent your uniform monthly. And then when you rank up to a certain point, you're actually going to have to pay a fee to maintain that rank. and all previous contracts are null and void as of this instant. And then you have a group like Judo in the background where you're like, you know what? It isn't what I really wanted to do. Hey, Judo, what are you guys doing? They're like, yeah, it's a monthly fee. And are you going to charge me to rent my uniform? God, no. Why would we do that? That's how you get the diehard people to suddenly be like, no, fuck this. I'm out. And that's damaging.
It's funny you phrase it that way because I have another analogy now. We're going on analogy road trip here. CrossFit gyms. The difference between a CrossFit gym and a strongman gym is the CrossFit brand. That's it. They're the same box. They have the same squat racks. They have the same stones, the same kegs, the same sandbags. Dang. The only difference is, and of course they train differently too, because if you have a CrossFit name, like if you see a gym or a building with a CrossFit on it, they are paying CrossFit HQ every year for that, for the name, just to be allowed to put that name somewhere. And they also have to have trainers that are trained by CrossFit HQ, basically not at there, but by them, by their people, which by the way, they're level 1 certification. Probably no one listening cares about this right now, but their level 1 certification, CrossFit's level 1 certification is a 16-hour course. You don't even have to be good at it. You just have to show up to a fucking La Quinta Inn and just go to the conference room for 8 hours twice in a weekend. And now you're a CrossFit level 1 coach. Dang. But that's just kind of what it reminded me of. It's like CrossFit has to pay, CrossFit gyms anyway, have to pay to have the CrossFit name. Strongman gyms are just CrossFit gyms without the CrossFit over the door.
Yeah. And that's crazy.
Yeah. It's not necessarily in reaction to that, but it is a bit of parallel there.
Yeah. Similar structure. And like, I think that's the thing too, is if your company started that way, a la Disney, just tyrannically holding onto their rights, then people are used to it. But if you started on another model and then you just like, we're stopping, this is now the new plan. Oh, sweet Jesus. Americans love to complain. That's what we do. That's the American dream.
Dude, it even caught Ryan Dancy, who was the CFO. He was one of the executives at Wizards of the Coast back in the late 90s when they were drafting the OGL that was changed from this, or changed into this rather. He said that he wishes he would have put an irrevocability clause in there. He didn't like anything that they had done in this. And he actually took part, if I recall correctly, we will correct me if I am here and wrong. But I'm pretty sure he actually had a hand in the orc licensing.
Oh, good. That does sound familiar. I hope that's right, because that's also a great story. And like,
it's almost poetic, you know?
Yeah. It's the old retired soldier putting on his armor again and coming back.
Dude, seriously though, it's like watching Red Dawn and they run into the SEALs out in the woods. And they're like, I'm coming on to retirement.
Yep, exactly.
Like, hell yeah, brother. Go get them Wolverines.
Meanwhile, the guys in the background panicking about, my goodness, they were making money, but they could have made more money. And now they're making less money because they tried to make more money. And now these other guys are coming in and chipping away at our market share. Someone think of the billionaires. Someone think of the millionaires.
If you're a kid and you have big dreams of working for a toy manufacturer and you grow up and your favorite toys are largely made by Hasbro, including D&D, Magic the Gathering, Beyblades, all the fun stuff.
Pokemon.
And then you learn about this and you learn about how, and I'm talking like if you're a kid that stumbled upon it like 5 years from now, when the new OGL is now the status quo and you don't know a world before this. And you learn there was a world before this. It's like learning about a world before the internet. Yeah. And you feel like you would have to feel kind of grossed out, right? Like with learning about something, well, I suppose we do find out about the icky origins of just about everything as we get older. And that doesn't stop us from using things like penicillin or microwaves.
I mean, there's a thing where like, it's icky, but it's positive. This is just icky. Like if I were explaining that to a kid, I think it would literally be a concept of like, oh yeah, so this is how it works now, but the way it used to work. And I can only imagine the kid hearing that and being like, Well, the original way sounds better. Can we do that? And I'd be like, sadly not.
Sadly not, and it's all because of my generation, and I deeply apologize to you kids for that. So Hasbro does have a business plan to essentially their motto is fewer, better, bigger.
Oh, that's why they're laying people off. Okay.
That is why they're laying people off. I kind of wanted to save that for toward the end because I wanted to see if maybe it would all make sense at the end. And the fewer, better, bigger. With the new OGL, right? They have 25% interest royalty coming in from the 750K and up producing publishers.
Yeah,
that money will undoubtedly be reinvested into the brand. I don't want to hit on this topic again, but the brand is going to grow without the community because of this. The community will probably suffer from it. And in that suffering, I think, because their escapism is being ripped away from them. And I think their escapism was probably the thing that was holding their sanity together anyway, because they probably hate their job. They probably hate the life that they're living. I mean, a lot of us kind of are in those positions to begin with, and we use escapism of all kinds of methodologies. Some of them are just a little bit more intense than others. And I feel like something like this that is so immersive and so world building, like I said, you can create and you can consume. That's the only two ways you really get to spend your time. Being creative for 3 straight hours is fucking exhausting. Consuming for 3 straight hours is just another Tuesday. Yeah. But this game allows you to do both, and it allows you to create at a pace that allows you to keep creating for an entire day, 2 days, 3 days on end.
Oh, yeah.
So if that is ripped away from people and they're no longer part of this community, or maybe they feel ostracized by the community that they once held dear, I see that as a potential call to retreat, almost like some of these people might end up just retreating away from the workforce entirely, because now what point is there to go to work if they don't have anything to support outside of that? And I'm being very general and dramatic here,
No, but it's a solid point, because I'm
talking escapism in general, not necessarily D&D.
Yeah. So you're illustrating a point that actually a lot of people feel these days, is my thumb on the pulse. Maybe I've seen an article somewhere. I'll see if we can find something on it. But we all want to be proud of what we do. It's part of kind of our inner story monologue. What makes D&D so great is we create those stories in real life. If we are working for a company that produces horrible products, that does horrible things, there's a large subset of humanity that just isn't going to be okay with that at the end of the day. Yeah, it would damage it. Honestly, there's pretty much 2 giant toy brands. It's Hasbro and So you work for one or the other. Both have made some horrible mistakes that reflect poorly on them.
We'll get into Mattel at some point. But they popped up in my searches. I'm interested now.
I'll do the Barbie girl song.
I'm just Ken. I'll pull off a hellacious Ryan Gosling. I'll just get super tan, put pink trunks on, get a wig.
Oh, I do that. I dress up for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it.
We can change our names to our jobs.
I'll do it. I'm just Ken. That's just going to be my name. I'm just Ken.
God, whoa. Sales. It's just what it would be. It's not as cool as Beach.
Beach.
Oh, no. Kevin. Off brand.
Just a couple extra letters in there.
So to illustrate another thing to what you were talking about, I believe, I'm actually going to swap the tab here so it'll show this on the stream, and then you should be able to pick up on the stream while we're watching and see what I'm showing. Basically, it's a graph going over Google Trends, which tracks the popularity of certain phrases from 0 to 100. So I pulled up Dungeons & Dragons in the Pathfinder role-playing game. We can very clearly see where they took a hit and the controversy hit, but they started to come back. A lot of that has been attributed to the Dungeons & Dragons movie performing well. It kind of puts some things under the rug. The core community's very, very ticked off still, but the Pathfinder role-playing game, I'm sure there's some other alternatives that really grew. I mean, we can see a sharp incline here for them, but it's not near the level that we would hope for, honestly.
Can we safely assume the red line is representative largely of the core community?
I don't think so, because this is more about Pathfinder, so we can see that there's an
that's why I was
established trend
asking. I just
beforehand.
saw that in there.
Yeah, but that peak, that sudden spike, is most likely caused by Dungeons & Dragons drama that was just filtering out. We can see where it hit. And that's the other thing, too, is that this also reflects just Dungeons & Dragons queries. So this means if it's pertaining to the game, and there's drama going on, this might not be good attention. But it is, you can definitely see, it is trending up right now. I mean, yeah, there is not a single state where Pathfinder is competing with.
So not only, oh my God. So this is, all right, another analogy here. So imagine you're a core member of a community and then you see some poser, some newbie come into the fray. You're at the mall and you see someone getting out of I don't know, they're wearing a Hollister flannel and a D&D shirt. I have no idea if that's normal. I'm just thinking of like my analogy here. I was an emo kid in high school and I had problems with just about everyone who like would wear Hollister and stuff like that. Mostly because I was a dick and a tool. And I was a lot of things back then. I'm very, very aware of it now, but it's fine. And it was just, as soon as I found, so like I was an emo kid where like I was listening to Dashboard Professional from first to last, Coheed and Cambria, you know, a bit of the mall scene, the Hawthorne Heights and all that stuff. So when I would see like the jocks, if you will, wearing like Fall Out Boy shirts, I would get so fucking mad. And I didn't even listen to Fall Out Boy. And I was just like, don't you take my identity from me. That is what it was. It was an existential threat to me. And because I was like, only I can be a part of this. Me and mine can be a part of this. You are not me or mine. You know, because at the time, like music was a massive escapism for me. Like, and you know, just kind of tying it back into that. And so now I'm wondering if this uptick in interest might cause a little bit of that. And if that is the case, it's not necessarily Hasbro's fault for that happening as much as it is the other person's fault for taking it that way. We're talking like maybe like 3 people are going to actually take it to this level.
Yeah.
But maybe one of those 3 are listening and would be able to be like, oh, fuck, like I feel a little seen right now. Maybe I'm not so alone. Maybe it is actually kind of cool that like the people who I don't usually associate with at the lunch table are now into the thing that I'm also into. How about I go and mingle with them and maybe grow the community a little bit more that way? I reach out across the aisle, so to speak, from the core to the fringes, the new guys, bring them into you and then like grow your community. You know, don't just focus on, oh, they're new. They're coming in for the VTT, the virtual tabletop, because it's easier. It's easier to understand. There's less risk involved, blah, blah, blah. That's a great entry point. Once they're hooked, pull them into the board, man.
Not that. You're not wrong. I mean, my dream is always let someone else make a mistake and take advantage of it. That's kind of how marketing works. That's also what you're describing.
Yeah, man.
Flip the bad punch and so.
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of room to grow here, for good and bad.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be up to the community to keep that up, keep up the good. And I think they are. I think they're fucking crushing it, honestly. The way they reacted. Yeah, the way they reacted by unsubscribing from their Hasbro subscription service. I forget what was that? What was it like?
Oh,
Dimension 20 or something like that. So it was the D&D subscription service, not the Hasbro. But they unsubscribed from that to the point where Cox released a memo or an open letter that essentially didn't apologize for anything. It was more like, we're sorry you feel this way kind of thing. We're going to go ahead and do it anyway, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just real gross. Yeah.
Oh, God. I can't imagine the ego would have to release one of those. Like, do you really think after this kind of catastrophic fuck up, you got to know you're not the sharpest tool in the shed.
Well, this is why
go ahead and try to lie like that poorly. Like,
yeah, man. And this is why I just wonder if it was done on purpose. Like, was this part of a strategy that he presented to his C-suite and they were just like, That's our guy, good old Cox. Look at him all big and bald and shiny up there. He's actually not bald, but a cock is bald, so.
Nah. Again, I would want to see data from him on it. Because, like, if that leak came out, I could kind of believe it, but we're talking beyond 3D chess. That's like 4D chess. That's how smart Musk thinks he is.
Ku Cox was a storyteller, though. I mean, it's his second qualification. He's a passionate storyteller.
That's true, but this would be like ending Game of Thrones with that, like, Bran has the best story bullshit.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I grew up in a small town, same as you. I'm sure you had people that everyone around you called storytellers. Do you know what people call storytellers outside of small towns? Liars.
Directors also kind of fall under that sometimes.
Well, I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. That's like saying every pedophile has a mustache, but not everyone with a mustache is a pedophile.
Yep.
Yeah, that checks out, right?
Yeah, sure. Maybe pause and think.
And on that note, we could probably go ahead and wrap it up, huh?
Yeah, I think we're hitting about that time. Maybe like 3-4 minutes left, but it's about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's all right. That's all right. We'll
it's chill time.
Yeah, we'll kill that with the outro, you know? So
that's fair. So to summarize.
Fuck
Hasbro.
Ku Cox, COO, former COO of Wizards of the Coast, promoted CEO of Hasbro in 2022 and 2023. Hasbro loses $1.4 billion as they shed E1 to Lionsgate, lay off roughly 2,000 people. Lionsgate lays off 10% of the force that they bought from Hasbro. The OGL has been updated to now require players, publishers making above $750,000 per year to pay them a 25% royalty. Hasbro. There has been a strong competitive source, very capitalistic drive there. I love it. Love seeing competition because it makes everyone better. These people coming in, the Pezos, the Cobalt Presses, the Critical Ones, they're coming in with their own IPs and they're coming in strong with their own fan bases. Yeah. And the community is kind of left a little scattered right now, from what I understand. But it is going to be temporary. And,
it'll form the good competition that we should see in a healthy capitalistic environment.
Yeah. And hopefully Ku Cox knows what he's doing, man. I
don't know. It's no way to get ahead in life.
He's truly, potentially, unironically unemployable. Oh, man. So on that note, we sincerely thank you to everyone. We send a sincere thank you to everyone who tuned in for this week's episode, and a special thank you to everyone who joined us at the start of the show. Don't forget to rate, review, comment, like, all that stuff. We have a lot to say, but not a lot of time to say it. So just come on, man. Make sure we got some more time to say it. And as a reminder, we stream every Thursday at 7 p.m. EST. The first and the last 15 minutes of the stream are where we get to know you guys. We get a chance to talk a little bit off topic. And then the show itself starts at 7:45 EST. We invite you to stick around with us for the next few minutes to vote on the next topic. We have 2 of them to choose from. Colin, would you like to do the honors real quick? Do you remember the 2 topics?
No. I'm unemployable, my friend.
All right. The 2 topics are, that's why I take notes, sir. Notes everywhere. Notes and whiteboards everywhere. It's wild.
I'm just going to take notes.
So next week we are actually doing mental health in the workplace. We've spoken a lot about this, sort of in passing. We're going to hit it on the nose next week, and we'll be revisiting that a lot. However, the 2 choices you get to choose from are social media at work, how it influences the discourse, or layoffs in 2024. There have been a lot, like a startling number. Something like 500,000 people have been laid off just in tech alone this year alone.
Tech. And now there's all sorts of production jobs that are dropping left and right for reasons.
Yeah. So for everyone else, thank you for showing up, and we will see you next week. Do good, be kind, be safe out there, people.